All right. Well, it looks like our initial input here has slowed down, so maybe we'll jump in and get started and allow people to join us as we go. Again, welcome to this afternoon from the New Haven area. My name is Mike Minatoli, and I'm the Director of Career Education and Coaching here at ELSOM. Very excited to be joining you today. As I'm seeing some of these names come in, there are certainly some that look familiar. So for those who I know, it's nice to at least see your name at this moment. And for those that don't, nice to meet you. Today, we are going to have a little bit of a conversation about positioning yourself for career progression. I have just some action items and some tips that you can think about, and also just some different ways to think about how we position ourselves for this progression, and also just what this progression could be. For some of us, progression in my career might look like promotion. It might look at increase in salary. It might look like new responsibilities. And those are all great things to be thinking about in the progression of your career. There might be others on here who are talking about progression in my career being increased trust from my employer. It might mean more flexibility in the role that I'm having. It might be getting closer to the reasons I ultimately attended business school, whether that was 5, 10, 15 years ago, and trying to pivot back to some of the reasons and some of the work that I've done here. And for others, it just might be the feeling of being a valued employee, right? Career progression can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and we're going to dive into some of those things. I did see a quick question about will we get a copy of the slides. I think the entire thing will be recorded, so you'll be able to take a look and listen to my wonderful voice afterward as well, as many times as you would like. Double speed, I am awesome. So again, welcome. I look forward to chatting with you. If you do have questions, feel free to use that Q&A button, and I will obviously open it up to additional questions at the end. But if you do have questions along the way, feel free to chat them in there and I will answer them when I can. But let's dive in. So if you have attended one of our sessions in the past, you've seen slides like this that start us off. And the reason we do that is a lot of times, especially in our career progression, we think about our career and we look at it and we say, it looks like a clear path. I have an idea of what I want to be. We're going to talk about vision in a minute. I have a vision of what my career path is, what my career progression is going to be. I might see a longer road, right? But usually I think about it as a straight road. I'm going to take these different steps. I'm just going to walk down this path and things are going to happen. Not many obstacles to get in my way. In this case, the picture, it is a long picture. It's a straight road, but if you can look at it, it is a little fuzzy. We can't get all the details of it. I think reality tells us as we navigate through our career that our career progression probably looks more like this. A lot of winding roads, a lot of opportunity to get off the main road and take a side road based on what's happening in life in my moment. Some of those roads will lead us back to that initial path. Some of us might find an entirely new path of our career progression depending on what's happening. And we have to be prepared for this. It's good to have the vision. We'll talk about setting goals to get to that. We'll talk about the actions that can get us to each of these spots. But know that, again, your career progression, whether you're in a more structured role where we look at it, we know that every 2 years a promotion is coming, if that's the way we're thinking about it. We may be at a pivot point in our career. I've been out of school for 5 years. I took a role when I initially graduated that was going to pay back my loans and get me set up financially. But now, again, I'm ready to pivot back to the work that I really did while I was in business school and for the reasons I came to business school. And that could be a different way to look at this progression. So do think about these two slides in that way. There's no one real way to get to wherever we're going. So let's talk a little bit about this piece and kind of set everything up. So we're going to explore these elements of progression and think about how you view it. And so the first piece I want to talk about is this vision. I've mentioned it a couple of times, right? Your vision statement is your inspirational statement. It's a picture that describes kind of where you see the future for where you are now. We're kind of looking at it from a standpoint of this has already happened. I know this is coming. I'm going to walk down that straight line, a little fuzzy, but I know we're going to get there. But that future creates our context for how we plan through. It's something for us to rally around, this vision of where we want to get toward. It's something that we can work toward. We can create a community around. And we can truly believe in that we're going to get there, right? Like we want to believe in the fact that this vision is where we see ourselves going and we know how to get there. If we don't know how to get there, how can we build toward, and what are the steps and actions that we can take to actually get to the end of that vision, right? And your vision is going to manifest in many ways. As our picture shows, many different paths, many different ways to go at it. So there could be a case, right? Maybe your vision overall is to create a sustainable planet, right? That's one of the reasons I decided to come to business school. I specifically chose Yale SOM to come and focus on these pieces and take classes across the university that focus on sustainability. But I could work in PE on renewable energy projects. I could work for a green bank. Maybe I'm working for an if I could speak, agricultural organization in Africa. Maybe I'm leading a clean water tech startup. There's so many things that I could be doing that lead toward that vision. Most likely not going to become a chemical manufacturer. Maybe I did, but how could I then come back? So we want to think about what are the different ways that we can kind of explore and get close to that vision in all the different roles that we're thinking of. Some, as we navigate our current role, maybe we love our organization and we can see ourselves learning and growing there. Maybe for some, we love our role, but the organization isn't the right thing. And we have to find different organizations that fulfill that vision a little bit more moving forward, hopefully in a similar type of role, if that's what it is. If you're clear on this vision, it's easy to look at different opportunities that might be coming your way, or it's easier to say yes or no as those opportunities present themselves, to stay on that path that we showed, to be aligned with it. Sometimes saying no is just as important as saying that yes. Now, there are always reasons in life why we might have to take something short-term, divert from our path, unexpected loss of job, unexpected family situations, so many different things that require the opportunity, right? There's two opportunities as we engage in job search. One is what we're talking about today, having this vision long-term. I'm going to make these moves to position myself to get to this point. There are others that say, I need a job tomorrow because I need to pay my bills, right? And I need to figure that out. And I'll figure out the long-term piece. In the short term, I need a job that pays my money. And that might be one course that sets us off. So that vision is important to help us get there. But no, again, there's going to be many different ways. Now let's talk about mission, right? Our mission is our purpose, our aim usually of an organization. It considers who the primary stakeholders are and what my responsibility to them is. This is essentially my employer, right? It guides the action that the organization takes. So if we consider SOM's mission, right, to educate leaders for business and society, it's a pretty clear message. How it enacts in the university is up to everyone, or in the school is up to everyone's interpretation. But that is the mission. We understand what it is. We know what it is. There are different steps that the school takes to move in that direction. Activities, speakers, courses, faculty, all buy into that. And we need to think about that from our career as well. And then we want to look at goals, right? Our goals are our specific, measurable, time-targeted objectives that we want to use. And these goals are achieved through smaller actions. And what we're going to start to dive into is what are these actions that I can do once I've set these goals to get where I want to be. And then obviously, the overlayer of all of this are our values, right? The core elements of culture that drive our priorities. They're beliefs that drive how sometimes we truly act. Sometimes, as we think about our values, there may be a difference between what our aspirational values are and what reality actually presents them at. But it's an important piece to explore as you're looking to see what's ahead, right? What are my values? How do they attach to my career? And again, that the example I gave earlier of I need a job tomorrow to pay my bills sets up a different exploration of the values that I hold versus I've got some time. I think over the next year or two, I want to explore my next move. How can I include my values in my search in that piece? So do think of these pieces of the overarching message of what we're talking about. So let's dive into some action and ideas to think about how we can approach this vision and set goals to move forward. Some of these things are going to look like things that you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, right? They might be simple ideas. We have to reflect to who we are and how we act and what we're doing to make sure that we're actually exemplifying these things in what we do, right? So I'm going to take a look at the first one here, right? We're going to say be authentic is something that we want to think about as we're thinking about our career progression, right? If I'm within an organization, I want to be an authentic teammate. I want to be an authentic employee. I want to be an authentic manager. And all of that comes from a couple different things. One, being honest. Being upfront. You can be honest and still be respectful. You can still be diplomatic and you can still be professional. Sometimes we find that people, especially managers, maybe we're beating around the bush to get somewhere. Sometimes we just need to be honest and be straightforward. And the key to expressing yourself well and using constructive is basically by using constructive and inclusive language in some cases to be more authentic, right? To create that authenticity, whether it's with my manager, whether it's with my team, whatever the case is. And it might be something as simple as thinking about our verbal skills, using and instead of but, right? Anytime you use but, sometimes that creates the opportunity that you risk alienating and making people feel defensive. Like, oh, I really like that idea, but is a different way of saying, I really like that idea and, right? So we want to think about the words that we're using. Try to be inclusive. Try to use constructive words rather than negative words. And it's not being false. It's framing the discussion in a forward-thinking way. What else can we do? Creates the and, as opposed to the but, which feels like a stop sometimes, right? Sometimes we say but, and then we sort of laugh in the background. So that's just a first start of being honest in your conversation creates that authenticity. Engage in other people. You have to care about more than just yourself. It's so important to engage other people at work, in our careers. Look people in the eye when you speak to them. There's so many people you talk to. You're at an event, you're talking to someone, you can see them looking around at other people. Who can I talk to next, as opposed to really engaging with you? So try to, as you are having those conversations with different people, make sure that you're there, make sure you're present. Practice reflective listening, and really listen to what someone is telling you. Try to remember that as best you can. If you have to make notes, that's a great way to kind of remember who people are, and what you talked about. And something that we all probably struggle with, right? Resist the temptation to talk about yourself all the time. We don't need to win the conversation by someone gives you a scenario and you go on top of that scenario to tell a story that reflects what you heard. So just think about those relationships, treat everyone with respect, right? The biggest thing you could ever do is just show that you are respecting everyone, every role throughout the organization. You should treat the CEO the same way down to the person who is standing at the front door, checking ID badges, whatever the case is. So be mindful of how you're treating everyone. I know I've heard of situations with some organizations where they will actually go out and ask the person at the front desk what the interaction with the candidate was when they came in, or with that employee, and use that as a measurable piece to determine if that's someone that they want within their organization. And then test yourself, right? Authenticity is about testing yourself, understanding who you are, how you behave, how you impact people in the organization. A great way to test yourself is if you have access to, you can go online, you can make an appointment with one of our coaches. Sometimes there are the opportunity to take some self-assessments, learn what your strengths are. A lot of times we think we act one way and we present ourselves one way. Sometimes we take these self-assessments and we realize that maybe our strengths are a different approach. Maybe some of those assessments give us language for us to use in work and life that will help us move forward. So just a couple different pieces to think about there, but do think about a self-assessment as an opportunity if you haven't done that in a while. And then the other thing is to look and model yourself after others, right? Studying traits of successful, authentic business leaders is a good way to understand what being real could look like, right? I'm going to put out 3 names here. You might have different reactions to who they are and what they've done, but at the end of the day, they're authentic people. You may not believe in their leadership style. You may not follow their leadership style, but they are authentic to who they are and their followers. So if you think about someone like Richard Branson, if you think about someone like Warren Buffett, if you think about someone like Donald Trump, they're each, they approach life differently. They work very differently, but you can tell they're passionate about the work that they do. They are consistent in their words, their deeds, their ambitions. They're not apologetic about who they are. And they integrate their style into work, into personal, into leadership. Again, we don't have to agree with what they're doing, but in terms of how they present themselves, that is them. So something to think about. Just being authentic means, we want to get you to a place where you're honest and real, that you're trusted and counted on. And it really can mean the difference of success at work and business, right? I've worked with people in the past where, when they're talking to you, they're saying one thing, and then as soon as they leave your office and go start talking to someone else, they have a completely different conversation at hand. And then sometimes those things come back and you hear how people are really talking. That's not going to help that progression move forward. Right. The second way to think about this progression and how to position yourself is to be present at work, right? Like, there's so many distractions in life, whether you're in the office, whether you're home, whatever the case is. Something just fell on my deck. I have no idea. So I'm trying to be present here. You are present. Is your mind present in what you're doing? Is there a period of time where we can just block out all the things that are happening? I used to work for someone who was very supportive, loved them as a manager, but every conversation that we were having was consistently looking at their watch because they were being texted and emailed and what's happening. And every conversation, I'm thinking, are you actually listening to what I'm saying to you? And so, just being present, and being present comes with a lot of different things, right? Maybe it's setting routines, maybe it's establishing boundaries, rules and expectations for others and how you work. Maybe it's focusing on one thing at a time if you're not a good multitasker, but finding a flow at work, trying to avoid the distractions, and prioritizing your time, right? Like one way that I think about this is I plan a lot of my in-person meetings and my in-person interactions for the days that I work in the office. And so, I'm meeting people, I'm talking to people, I'm having conversations. When I am home and I have the quiet opportunity, I get work done. The tasks that need to be done, the projects that need to be done. So it's almost like two different, it's two very different days in terms of one day I come home tired because I've been talking all day. The other, I'm tired because I was getting things done and really thinking about what's moving forward. So just prioritizing the time and being present in what you're doing is very helpful. Being present leads to better business interactions, usually better problem solving ability because you're dialed in, you know what we're talking about, right? How many of us have logged onto a meeting? There were probably 10 emails prior to that meeting explaining everything that's going to happen in that meeting. And you just sat down and you have no idea what's going on because you were working on something else, you were distracted. Sometimes we're on these Zoom calls and we're playing on our phones or we're texting, we're reading other things. And then someone says, oh, Mike, what did you want to include? Right. And because I wasn't present, I have no idea what anybody's talking about. And the hope is that being present then leads to that opportunity for increased productivity. You can focus, recognize what's going on, eliminate things that don't move your project forward, that don't move you forward. So those are important things, right? Being present helps us understand. Like one of the things that I like to do is really just walk around, see what's going on in Evans, what's happening, so that I know what students are into, what faculty are into, what staff are into. Understanding your business and what's going around you, keeping current on news so you know what's going on. Explore shared files that are happening. What can you gain from things that have happened in the past? And just get a better understanding of why are things done the way that they're done, and then also use that to identify opportunities for improvement or change in the future. Maybe it's even an opportunity to connect others, right? You could be the connector within, again, all about being present, being in the moment, being where you are and focusing on that. So think about that as an option. Sorry, I'll answer that next question there at the end here. So let's move forward. Be professional. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. These should be things that everybody on here kind of knows, right? 10 qualities of professional people: being reliable, being humble, having etiquette, being neat, considerate, being dedicated, being organized, accountable, having integrity, having an expertise. A lot of these things go back to that piece about being authentic. You'll see a lot of themes carried through some of these slides, but I pulled this off Indeed. I thought it was interesting enough to share just these 10 qualities that we look at as professional people. I'm finding, I guess, and not to say that people are unprofessional. I think, the opportunity that COVID provided for more virtual work environments, I think has in some ways hurt the professional level that some folks are coming back with, right? It eased us down. Maybe we were on super high. I personally am perfectly okay with it. But, people are dressing maybe one or two levels down than what they thought they were, right? People are taking advantage of time when they're not, in need of that personal time in the office. So things to just think about are you hitting all the buttons and checking off all the boxes on some of these things to show that you are still dedicated, that you are still an accountable person, right? There's so many different things that have happened in the last couple of years with people being home. Like I look at it from my own situation, right? My kids were very young when we first got here into COVID. They got involved in 1,000 activities over the course of COVID that now that we're back at work, I don't understand how people get their kids to events at 4:30 in the afternoon. Some people might be doing something similar, but those are all things that I have to balance how I treat each meeting, how I schedule my time, how I think about work. Sometimes it leads to me not being present. Sometimes that does, lead me the time to know when I need to focus and what time period I have to get these things done. So, thinking about being professional, it just affects how different people view you, and the opportunity for that conversation at different levels of your organization to think about who you are and where you're coming from. So the interesting piece about this slide, just, fulfilling your responsibilities, right? Taking pride in your work, becoming an expert at your role, I think are things that sometimes these days get left behind. In some cases, like I know some people I work with who, they talk about all the great things that they're doing, which are all great things. But when you dial it back to what their actual job is, I question whether they actually do their job, right? They're volunteering for extra. They're doing all these pieces that are certainly contributing to society and helping others. But are you actually good at your job at the end of the day? And that's something, as we think about that piece of, if we go back to what's my idea of career progression, if my idea of career progression is more toward that promotion, that salary, that piece that moves, maybe some of those pieces of my career that I am thinking about in a more financial way, in a more title responsibility way, knowing, if I know that someone knows their job in and out, that makes it easier for me to move forward. So keeping an eye on the prize is one thing. Sometimes a promotion is earned based on the quality of your performance. So investigate the role I have on here. Prioritize your responsibilities when you're working on all these different things. Meet your deadlines when you can, and check in and ask for feedback. Right. I think a lot of times we are afraid to ask how we're doing, right? Because sometimes we're nervous about what might be coming back. But it does set us on the right way. So if you are in a role where there's an opportunity, maybe you have a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, 6-month check-in with your manager, which I hope you do. Or if you are a manager who is helping others, have these check-ins and don't be afraid to ask for that feedback. I remember a student telling me a story about their internship, quite frankly, where they were working on their project. They were going through at the midway, they thought they were doing great. They had a conversation with their manager, and the manager basically said, like, everything that you've done has nothing to do with what we thought this project was going to go to. And so now you're on your heels and you're like, oh, I have to totally shift and go, and I have half the time to be productive in what I want to do. So I think thinking about the fact that, and you'll see this on some of the other slides, like we want relationships, we want to take initiative, we want to help others. We also need to know what our job is and be an expert in that. And one of the things that we want to think about in our career progression is, are we looking to be a generalist who's really good at a lot of different things? And so I can move to a lot of different positions. I can move to a lot of different roles, take on a lot of different functions, take on a lot of different projects. And be seen as kind of that in that generalist type role? Or do I want to be an expert? I want to be known for this, and I hope to progress through my career as an expert in this piece. And so how do I figure out which one of those is best for me? And then what are the steps that I can take to accomplish becoming that expert, or deciding that I'm going to be more of a jack of all trades who can kind of fit into any type of role. My overarching interest is this industry, but I can take on any work within it. Could be a way that you think about it. And so I was thinking about my own career as I was talking about this many years ago. I worked in a role that was very transitioning, and there were a lot of people being laid off, and thankfully they wanted to keep me, but they gave me some additional responsibilities that didn't necessarily tie to what I had taken the job for. I was very happy to have the job, but I was given basically like 9 Excel spreadsheets to link together. This is way, this is 20 years ago, so Excel was not as advanced as it is, but it was a revenue projections worksheet that had links and all these other things to manage. And then I decided to help HR and oversee the internship program. And so I was much more engaged in reviewing resumes and looking for students, which probably led me to the career that I'm in now. But, that spreadsheet that I would work on probably every week, they were like, could you go back? There's a couple of mistakes, right? That was my actual job. This other thing was something that I was taking on. I was focusing my time towards something that wasn't necessarily my role, and kind of ignoring this piece that was an essential part of my role, my team, and how we move forward. So just kind of thinking about it in that way, make sure you're doing your job. But find opportunities to have the conversation. What am I doing well? What am I not? What's the next step I can take? Are there other things I could do? Are there deficiencies in the work that I'm doing? Are the things that you think I can excel at, that I am excelling at, that I should focus in on more and learn more about? So do think about that from a lot of different places as you think about this piece of career progression. It's also a good opportunity, that check back can also give you that opportunity to think about, okay, I'm on this road right now. This role and the feedback I'm getting keeps me on that sort of straightforward, hazy path. But if I'm hearing something and I'm like, I don't know that this is where I want to be or what I want to be doing, maybe I need to now start looking at one of those side paths, one of those side roads to kind of figure out where to go from here. So thinking about that in your future. All right, being solution oriented, right? We all love solution oriented people. As a manager, it's always great. I love when people encounter challenges. But we want to get out of that mindset of just going to the team leader and expecting them to fix it, right? I love when people on my team kind of take a look at they assess the situation, and they look for some solutions before they come to me. And then when they're presenting the challenge along with the solutions, gives me the opportunity to really decide, as opposed to get stuck in the weeds, right? There's so many different ways that we get emails now, we get in-person conversations, we get Slacks, we get texts. Slack is like the bane of my existence. I'm sure many of you use different communication tools, right? People just dropping bombs all day with different problems that are happening, and there's no solution there, right? So as you're thinking about, again, how can we help the leaders of organization? How can I show that I'm taking responsibility, that maybe I'm a curious person, right? I've showed my team, and I've been talking about this recently. If you're a fan of the Ted Lasso show, right, there's a scene where they're playing darts and he talks about being curious, asking a lot of questions. It goes back to that last slide, right? How can we be curious? Let's try and figure this out before I go and show someone that I didn't take that opportunity, right? Dive in. Can I find an answer? And some of that you need to play off who your manager is, who your leaders are. Is that something they're receptive to, or do they want to know what's happening at all times? And then also, what's the time frame that I have to kind of figure out these solutions versus I need to let somebody know that this is happening right now, right? We have to balance that out with each situation. If it's obviously something that is more larger scale, we want to inform our leaders right away. If it is something that is of more small scale, we want to, maybe there is some time there that I can kind of figure out what's going on here and come up with some solutions for myself. But this is where, again, going back to that piece about exploring and thinking about getting to know your surroundings really do play a major role. If you understand how people work, how the organization works, maybe there's some different solutions as opposed to just kind of relying on maybe some academics or how things have always been done. Maybe there's a way to kind of unearth a new opportunity moving forward. But so do try to be solutions oriented. I know as I think about my team, there's probably some people that do more solutions oriented answers. There's some people that don't. I think for varying reasons, I don't weigh one over the other. But at the back of my mind, there's probably a conversation at different times that I have with myself about, all right, this person really took the initiative to go figure this out. That's someone I can maybe give some more work to, or give some more responsibility to, without having to worry about, am I going to get 10,000 questions about where and how and why, that they can just go and run with it, given a little parameter of the work. So do think about how that is interpreted in the work that you're doing as you move forward. I'm a big fan of this, recording your accomplishments, right? There's so much going on in our world today. It's hard to even remember what we do from year to year sometimes. And I know it's kind of review time here at SOM. And a lot of times I ask everyone to kind of fill out a one sheet. What did you accomplish this year? What did you hope to accomplish? What were our hits? What's our misses? And a lot of times I'm reading those and I just totally forgot about some of the things that we worked on because it was a full year time. Some of that's on me. But recording these accomplishments is a way for you, if you do have a review period that is similar, that's great. It might give you an opportunity, if you're not someone that updates their resume often, maybe you can go back and refer to those accomplishments and pick out a couple pieces to add to your resume. And it just might give you also some stories to talk about with different folks as different opportunities present themselves to you. Maybe it's an opportunity within your organization. Maybe it's an opportunity that's just a conversation with someone. Maybe it is that opportunity to transition to a new role at a new company. Or maybe it's just yourself thinking about, wow, these are the accomplishments that I had this year. They were great. But again, this isn't stuff that I want to be doing. So maybe I do need to pivot and think about the road that I'm on and where that's going to lead me. So do think about this, and there's so many different ways to do this. You could do a simple Excel spreadsheet. There's all kinds of little sheets that you can download off the internet. There's an example there. There's an app called, I think it was called My Accomplishments, that you can kind of log these things into. The example all the way in the back there on the screen is a Trello board that someone was using to create and kind of track their accomplishments. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. But record these things, right? Maybe it's something that isn't directly related to your job that you did, that again is related more to something that you were doing a couple of years ago, that more closely relates to projects that you want to be moving into. And then it gives you some conversation piece to talk about those things in the future. But also, again, sometimes we just forget what this stuff is. So I think this is a good tool to kind of keep. And, if you do it once a month, you can kind of look at where you are in different projects, think about the things that you've done. Maybe I helped someone, maybe I accomplished this project, maybe I did these interviews, whatever the case is. It can certainly help you. It also, as I said, it helps with the resume. It helps you to maybe fill out a LinkedIn profile and talk about some of the things you wouldn't on a resume, create a presence that's there. From a if we want to look at it from a different perspective, right? Maybe you go into that meeting with your manager, and they're saying, for all these reasons, we're not going to move you forward. It also gives you some solid, concrete references to kind of refer back to in the conversation. Say, actually, I did these things. So a couple things that I would say, examples of things that you could track: financial goals that you reached, analytics, results, things like that. Difficult situations with coworkers that you successfully navigated are a great thing to track. Those are usually things that don't go in our mind all the time. Just completing tasks on time, how you actually did it, overcoming some pressures, maybe times that you succeeded in meeting your goals with a lot of different things happening, exceeding expectations on a certain project. Feedback from a client or a coworker that maybe somebody didn't hear, that you can use. A lot of different things that could be included into this piece, that would certainly help you moving forward, especially if there are things that are happening outside the work. But and then how can we do this? Again, maybe you're a journal person, you could just put them in your notes of iPhone. Maybe you've got a full-on Excel tracker. I know some people like to use the voice recording feature on their phone. It doesn't matter how you do it, just find a way to do it, and how you can find that moving forward. All right, identifying mentors is a great opportunity for you to move your career forward. They can advise you on skills that you might need to develop in order to advance. And they also become a champion for you. Again, whether that's a promotion within or a move out, these mentors can be people that help us, right? And I want to, sometimes there's two different kind of roles that people play under the mentor time. Sometimes we have sponsors or referrers, right? Those are more short-term relationships. I need you to speak to this person to get me through a process. Here we're talking about mentors, a more long-term relationship where you really know each other, you have conversations, you challenge one another. And the opportunity where when you're meeting, you're setting goals for what that meeting looks like. You're going in with an agenda of what you hope to talk about. You want to be open and receptive to feedback when you're meeting with a mentor. You want to know when time makes sense and when it doesn't. When can I push and when do I know to kind of take a step back? I know a lot of people who in their lives, both personal and professional, have kind of a board of mentors that guide them through whatever might be happening in their life, questions that they have about themselves or questions that they have about their work. So if you're someone that is maybe you are stuck in a place where you're going through the motions, you're doing the work, you're enjoying it enough, you're making enough money to survive, but you have questions, maybe this is the moment to kind of think about what mentors are out there who could help you navigate these different situations that are happening. Obviously, from my standpoint, I would say, there's opportunity here as a lifelong Yale SOM person. You have the opportunity to come in and meet with a coach. I think there's topics that we can certainly help you along the lines with your career. If it's something that is above and beyond, we'll provide resources on where to find the answer to some of those questions. But definitely identify mentors for your life. It doesn't have to be the board. It could be one or two people. It could be one person. But identify who they are, right? Maybe it is someone who is someone you want a job similar to theirs in 5, 10, 15 years. Consider, are they inside, are they outside your workplace? Is it someone that you currently work for now and you want to get to that role, but you know they're not leaving, right? So like, you don't want to be like, hey, I want your job, but how can you navigate, or how can they maybe help you? Maybe they realize that, right? I know, again, if I use my personal situation, like essentially for the people that work for me, there's very little opportunity to get promoted until I leave. There's not that type of structure. So, you know, you're kind of in it for the long term, and maybe hoping that I leave. But at the same time, how can we use, I'm very open with the people that work for me. If I see a role that I think is interesting for them, I'll pass it on. I don't want anyone to leave, but I want them to develop professionally and find those different opportunities. Whether that makes me a mentor in that space or not, I don't know. We can question that, right? But that's why we create this group, right? We've got a network, we've got people with ears and eyes open. We'll talk about relationships in a little bit, but how can I have, you know, again, a smaller group that's really, you know, I'm bouncing a lot of ideas off of them to kind of get a sense of, I'm unsure, right? I'm at that path. If we think back to that second slide, a third slide, that person standing there, they've kind of got 3 roads in front of them. I think I want to go on this one. I'm unsure about these other 2. That mentor might be somebody that can help you navigate that situation, or connect you to people who can help you navigate that conversation. So be thinking about, who are these people? Maybe they are people that are within your, again, they're already in your life. Maybe there are others that you need to be connected to through your network. Maybe they're people you just want to start with cold calls right now and see, starts with an informational and builds into a true relationship. So do think about that. It doesn't matter what level of position you are in your life, right? We could always have someone that is either in a similar type role, handling similar type of situations, or we can have someone that is kind of ahead of us and can give us that idea of, how can I move forward? Right, being a team player, again, not gonna dive into this one too much, but you know, this is a huge part of obviously any organization. If I see that people are team players, again, we're just going to be more open to engaging with them, right? If I know that they communicate well, if they're accountable, if there's support, you know, I'll give you an example, right? Like I don't open up my own personal network to every student that comes in, but if I know that someone's met with me a bunch of times, and I know where they're coming from, and I know what they want, I might connect someone. I just did this with a student recently who wants to work in Africa. Right. And I just happen to have a roommate from college that works in Africa. And I don't open that person up to everyone, but because I know that this person is a team player, has done the right things, has communicated well, has taken accountability for what they've done, has adapted, has been positive about everything that they've done, is committed to where they want to be in their career. I kind of thought, all right, this is someone I feel I can connect to, someone in my personal network, right? And that same type of environment might happen with people that you're getting to that kind of idea of, I'm looking for a mentor. I'm not there yet. Here's a couple things that I might need to do to show that person and to earn their trust so that they'll pass me on, or that they will take on that role with me to be my mentor down the line. So think about it. Again, some of these things feel like just, oh yeah, that makes, these are easy things to do, but are we doing them? Like, let's take a look at our life. Am I actually a good team player? Do I communicate? Do I take initiative? Am I supportive of others? Do I share? Am I open-minded to the conversations that are happening around me? Or am I kind of set in what I do and how I've been? And those types of things could just open up opportunity, I think, to be a little bit more flexible with what we're doing. All right, consider professional development, right? At the end of the day, everything that we've kind of talked about can be kind of bucketed into this idea of professional development. But, gaining new skills through continuing education, through career training, they always help. Maybe it's taking a class or a workshop, maybe it's attending a professional or an industry conference, maybe it's earning some kind of certificate to show where I'm going. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach this. And, I was scrolling through LinkedIn yesterday and I saw, I would say I saw a couple of friends and former students of mine that were talking about engaging in coaching courses, right? And wanting to kind of expand. It's always something that interests them. They're managers, they have a lot of people, and they're feeling that they don't know, in some cases, how to work with a large team that they're managing. So they're looking at, how can I go through a couple coaching courses to get a better understanding of how to be an active listener, how how to, provide opportunity, not providing someone a solution, providing someone options of ways to think about whatever is moving them forward. So that was just one example. You see people taking technical courses all the time. Maybe we're taking language courses, depending on where we're going. Maybe we're learning. It could be something as simple as just going out and learning about culture, right? Like, do I have a bunch of clients? Do I have a bunch of coworkers who are from a specific culture? Can I go learn a little bit more about that to understand where they're coming from? And how we act moving forward. What are the things that they're thinking about that are different than the way that I'm thinking about? Maybe the way that I work is very different from the way that they work. And uncovering that and understanding that, I think is a step forward in kind of thinking about how I can progress in my career. If you're in a more senior role, you're someone that's been out for 10, 15, 20 years, maybe this opportunity for professional development is thinking about joining a board. Maybe it's a community board, maybe it is a professional board, maybe it's a volunteer type opportunity, but how can you get out there? And again, it's expanding your network, it's building relationships, but it's also something that people look for, right? In the positions that I've had in universities for a couple of years, I will always get a random email once a month from someone who says, I'd love to come and speak to students. And I always kind of look at the person's title, and you can see they're kind of in a position, they're in a senior place, maybe they're looking to take that next step to a C-suite type role or a more senior role in their organization. One way that they see the opportunity to kind of get out there is to go on the speaking circuit, and college courses are a way to do that, right? Connect with faculty, speak at student conferences, speak at any conference really. But I've noticed that a number of times. And like I said, I probably get a monthly email of someone who's just out of the blue volunteering to come and speak. So if you're at a more senior level, maybe those are ways that you can kind of expand and step out of the role that you're doing, make new connections, and develop yourself professionally at that point. To get yourself out there. So the professional development piece, again, everything we've talked about today kind of falls into this bucket, but there might be some more hard skills that you could work on that help expand. Maybe they help you understand where your team or your employers are coming from. Maybe they help you understand where your leader is coming from. Maybe they just create a new skill that lets you go and go down one of those side roads that we talked about earlier. Right? Doesn't get much clearer about this, right? Like, our lives are about relationships. Our work is about relationships. That's what we have to kind of focus on. In today's day and age, again, if we're specifically talking about our career, if we're specifically talking about changing jobs, it's so easy to apply to jobs and we don't know where it goes, right? You look at LinkedIn, you see a job, and then you see like 1,474 people have applied to this job on LinkedIn that I've also seen. That's a black hole. The chances that any recruiter in there is actually looking at your resume is probably pretty slim. So you want to develop the relationships around this. And again, it's that sponsorship piece or that referrer piece where we still need to build a relationship there. We're not going to have one conversation with someone and be like, hey, would you mind tapping HR for me? We still want there to be a relationship along the way. Because we have to build that trust, right? If my name is going to be on you as someone that's being recommended for a role, as someone that's being recommended for a promotion, if someone's being recommended for a project, that trust has to be there, right? So thinking about how do we build and earn that trust, right? And we earn it by being someone who adds value to others, contributes to building relationships. And sometimes we're somebody that builds relationships when we don't need them, right? We're very set in what we do. I'm comfortable in my role. I'm not planning on moving. There should still be opportunity to build relationships. Again, I think about, I was saying earlier, I had a supervisor, a leader, a manager who would constantly be looking at his phone. The one thing that I took away from that person is, I would say 2-3 times a week, they were having breakfast or lunch with someone from a previous point in their career, reconnecting, connecting, learning what's going on in the business, understanding who's out there, using those connections to reconnect with people they hadn't talked to already. So again, if you're feeling stuck, I'm applying to a ton of things, I'm waiting for the promotion, we've had a number of conversations, there's just no movement. Is that a way that we can kind of break out of this piece by building relationships, by reconnecting with others? We might learn a piece of information that helps us make a move. We might learn a piece of information that tells us I should probably stay here for a year or two. I might learn a piece of information that allows me to make this huge leap that I've been waiting to make for a couple of years, right? Maybe when I was at SOM for my 1-2 years, everything I did focused on the energy space, right? I really had a true passion to work in energy. When I graduated, I had a ton of loans I needed to fix, I needed to pay back. I took a role that doesn't necessarily relate to energy. Great skills, enjoyed the job, but I've been there now 2-3 years, and I'm looking to make this pivot to get back. Like, I've seen this vision. I know I want to get to the energy space. How can I point back to all this work that I did at school to say I was in the club, I was a leader, I planned a conference, I did this study, I worked with faculty. Literally my entire business school presence was about building toward this space. I wasn't able to do it in the interim, but now I'm looking to do it with this new bag of skills that I got from this role that I kind of had to take to do these, to kind of accomplish these other things that I needed to accomplish. Whether that was the job that was available, I needed to pay my bills, it was a safe way, it gave me sponsorship, whatever the case was. At the end of the day, if people don't know who you are, they can't help you, right? And I would say, if we dial it all the way back to those that did an internship at SOM, I would say and I was at Stern for a long time too, the students who typically had come back and said they didn't receive an offer had been told that it was because they didn't really they didn't take the opportunity to get to know everyone, right? They didn't join the lunches. They just they did their work, 100% satisfactory, but we didn't know them well enough to make that full-time offer, to make that full commitment to them. Right. So do think about the relationships that you have out there. Doesn't have to be for the mentorship, doesn't have to be for sponsorship, doesn't have to be for the refer. Maybe it's someone that just has a similar interest to mine, and we can have a great conversation and check in, twice a year, 3 times a year. And maybe it's just an email to get my name in front of them. Maybe it is an actual sit down. But do think about the relationship. That's something that can, again, just kind of create it's a new opportunity. If you're in your head all the time, let's put those thoughts on other people and see what they come back with. Let's use those conversations to learn and grow for ourselves, to help inform us of the decisions that maybe we need to make as we get to those crossroads. Okay. So I've given you a lot of action tips and things to think about. I like to end a lot of my presentations about these types of things with just this slide, right? Whoever we are, and again, there's some repetitive things in here. Whether you read or listened to any of the previous slides of what I talked about, whether you've engaged or not engaged in any of the areas we've spoken about, I find these are a list of things that kind of set people apart in some cases, right? They're 10 things. They literally require 0 talent, right? Just having the right attitude, having a strong work ethic, putting in the effort, what's the appropriate body language, right? I talk about that with my kids a lot. Bringing that energy, being excited to be at work. And even if you're not, how can you turn it on for the time that you're in front of people? Being committed to what you're working on, having that passion, right? And the passion piece is kind of what, and in some cases I'm talking about. I was passionate about energy for 2 years while I was at SOM. I had to push that passion aside, but it hasn't died. I'm still here and I'm ready to move back. So let me show that passion that I had. And one of the ways that I can prove it is I spend all my time at business school focusing on this area. So that's why I'm telling you I'm passionate about it, right? Being coachable. I think we've entered a point in the world where kind of anytime someone's coaching us, we kind of take that as a negative, but we need to see that as an opportunity to learn and grow. I talk about this sometimes with my oldest daughter. She'll come home and say, well, the coach told me to do this. And I'm like, yes, that's what I pay him for. We're paying him to coach you and to examine what's going on and see, and then provide you feedback so that you can grow from it. Right. And that same concept goes through any opportunity that we're looking at. Being open and being coachable is a huge piece. I'll often tell current students, right? Like, the smartest person doesn't always get the job. The person who shows that they're the most coachable and is open to learning and growing might be the person that gets the job over the smartest person. Doing extra, we've mentioned that here. Doing extra, but also, again, it doesn't take any talent, but we want to make sure that we're fulfilling our own responsibilities first, and then overall just being prepared. Right. Taking the time, whether you're setting up your schedule to understand where we're at, knowing what's going on, and just being prepared for different things. So those are just a slide I like to end on to kind of think about. These are very basic things that could absolutely set us up for some kind of progression as we move forward. So with that, I will open up to questions. There's a couple in here. Yes, I answered the one. We'll get the slides. It'll be a full video. Can you double click on self-assessment and what's available? Oh, so in terms of self-assessment, we use Clifton Strengths in the office. and we have access to something called Career Leader. If you've done either of those as students, we can probably figure out a way to pull them up and have a conversation about them. If there are others that you're interested in, I would still set up an appointment. Some coaches know of others that we don't necessarily engage in, but if you can find a way to engage in them, that's great. And then there's one other, I don't know the name of it. We're working on the potential of joining that. But from this standpoint, as of today, I would say Clifton Strengths and Career Leader are the two that we could provide right out of the gate very easily. I think most of the coaches are familiar with Myers-Briggs. If that's something, if you know what it is and don't need to take it, we could certainly frame a conversation about it. But there's a lot of different self-assessments out there that I just came across one. Someone had written a really interesting LinkedIn post about just their own process of self-assessment and again, wanting to learn more about their employees and how to deal with them. And they were using something called 16 personalities. And they were referencing it as Myers-Briggs for millennials, and I did it real quick, and I haven't really looked at it, but it was pretty cool, and I think an interesting way to get to get some language about yourself. So, and it was free, so you can check out 16personalities.com. No endorsement, just one that I know some people have mentioned. There's a question here. What advice would you give for someone who's feeling stuck in their current role, isn't sure how to be motivated in their job? How can we find a career that fits our interests, passion, and we're not entirely sure what that might be? So I think some of the things that we've talked about probably fit into that category, right? To me, the starting point, again, I'm going to put a plug, would be to schedule. If you haven't scheduled a coaching appointment, you have access. Might as well schedule some coaching appointments. You could do those weekly and kind of check in with the coach and set up a strategy for kind of figuring out what it is. But I think the other things I would mention here would be that, identifying, just building out that relationship piece, right? Were there fellow students in your class that you met here? Were there people that you've come across during your time at SOM that you could reach out to who are doing, and I think there's two paths, right? Someone that is working in a role that you just want to explore. Maybe there are people who were always in your recruiting circle, right? They were always kind of recruiting. You were at the same events. You were always up for the same roles. Like maybe reach out to some of those people. What have they navigated in their career? How have they made different choices? What have they ended up doing? And maybe we can glean something from the conversations we have with those folks. To ask someone for 10, 15 minutes of their time, it's not a huge ask. And that probably turns into something that is, you probably spend 10, 15 minutes just, reliving your time at SOM. But I think that would be one. And then obviously then developing that out into how can I identify some of these mentors that I could make? I think there's a ton that you can read. I think there's a ton that you can learn. I think you need to engage. If you're at a point in your career where you're like, this is good enough for now, but it's not my long term. I think getting yourself out there, having conversations, meeting people, and strategically kind of exploring what people are doing. I think another thing that kind of comes across, especially in the career space these days, is like, there's so many things that land under a title, right? There's a title, we'll say product manager for today, because that's a hot title, right? But product manager across so many different organizations can be so different. And so just having a conversation, what does a product manager do in your organization? What type of roles? What are the exit opportunities? I think starting those conversations, I think, would be a good way if you're feeling a little stuck, in addition to obviously a little coaching piece. For the person that did write, yes, we do provide career coaching for alums. Absolutely. If you navigate yourself to the alumni website and to the career piece, you can log into CMS and make yourself an appointment. We make half-hour appointments, and we have a very specific coach working with alums. We let you hold one at a time, and you can book a new one as soon as you accomplish your current one. So there's a question here. How do I think the school provides unique resources to help students achieve the mission of SOM? I think through faculty, obviously through classes when you were here. I think reconnecting with those folks, I think, is one way that you can do that. But I truly believe that it is the alumni network itself, right? The people that we're on this call with today are the resource that we can take advantage of through the school to help educate leaders for business and society, right? The opportunity to identify some people that are kind of living, that you feel are living what that mission means to you. and trying to reach out to connect them, I think is the best thing that we can do in this moment, and probably the best resource. Again, there's little things that we can read, there's little websites that we could recommend, but I think that engagement and talking, reconnecting with a faculty member, reconnecting with a staff member that you spoke with, or looking at those classmates that, again, you connected with most, or that are doing things that maybe weren't the right thing for you when you were graduating, but might be the right thing for you now. How can we reconnect with those folks to kind of learn about how they got there? What's the path in? What kind of skills do I need so I can start to work toward those pieces? Maybe they just become a one-off conversation and a great reconnection. Maybe that person becomes a mentor to kind of live out that idea of and society, right? There's so many conversations. We've hit a time in the year here even where a lot of students, well, everybody's going to consulting, everybody's going to banking. Yeah, again, some people have reasons that whether they're building skills forward, they want the brand forward, they need to pay their loans, right? They know that 2-3 years down the line, they're going to pivot to something else. They know that already. It's how you take advantage of those 2-3 years that you're doing this thing to get to that pivot point. And so I'll say the same thing here. And there is a question. What type of support does SOM provide for alums? So we have an entire website with resources, videos like this. And then as I mentioned, the opportunity to use the SOM Connect directory, which the alumni office oversees. Hopefully you're all part of that and you can go on there and search for people of like interest. And then we have our coaching appointments and programming that we work with alums on. So all good pieces that you should and could take advantage of. Again, we probably have somewhere between 15 and 20 alumni appointments available per week. If you haven't had a chance or haven't logged into CMS, which is our career management system, in a long time, you can either reach out to our office or the alumni office and we can get you set up to be able to make those appointments. And so there was just a question about might be good to have a virtual group of people to make or give opinion for sharing names in your active Zoom meeting. Absolutely, great advice. That we could certainly work on having these, but take advantage of all the events that are happening, right? There's events that are happening through through the alumni office here. There's probably events that are happening through the alumni office of your undergrad or other institutions. Take it, that last slide kind of sums it all up before I got to the 10 things, but it's all about relationships, right? The more you can get out there and talk and connect, the better off you'll be in your career. So happy to, again, opening up this invitation. If you're on this call and you're wondering if you're stuck, whatever your situation is, even if you just want to come and talk, if you want to get some resources, again, we hear it all. In some cases, it kind of fits into our parameter of what coaching is. In others, we might have to refer you out to a more executive or life coach or things like that. But start with us. We could certainly help you out with that. I hope that this at least gives you some ideas to think about how your career could move forward, whether, again, you're looking for that kind of immediate impact of new job, increased salary, or if you're thinking about flexibility, how can I change these paths? But do think about those two pictures at the beginning. I think they put us at a lot of different places in our lives. So thanks for your attention today. I look forward to seeing you all again. Thanks for the questions and to the alumni office for setting this off. But if there are no other questions, I'll wish you all a great day and we'll see you all next time.